Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rollwise podcast, where we explore all things tabletop RPG related. We are continuing our deep dive into Fabula Ultima this week, and I'm joined with my two friends, players, and co-hosts, Brent
Hello, everybody.
and Jeff.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. So last week we had some technical gremlins basically consume our episode, and who knows what happened with it, but it's gone, and we are sorry. But we are fairly low key, low tech, and not very good at recovering those types of technical issues. So we're just going to do a different episode about character creation this week. Are you guys ready to explain to everybody our journey through the character creation process, guys?
We are ready.
All right. So a couple weeks ago, we started on a trip down the Fabula Ultima lane. And those of you that don't know Fabula Ultima, it's a tabletop RPG that is focused on kind of simulating the feel of Japanese role-playing games, kind of capturing that epic story, fun characters that feel that when you pick up a game like Final Fantasy VII and all of those kinds of things. Try to put that to pen and paper. So based on what we've seen so far, it seems like it's doing a fairly good job. But it all comes down to this next step, the characters. Like, what kind of character can you create for this? So we're just going to go through the character creation steps and kind of comment on what we created, just so you guys are aware, so that when we do our actual play on Monday, or attempt to do an actual play on Monday, which will be live streamed.
I've decided to call it attempted streaming. That's what I'm going to call our live show, attempted streaming.
Attempted streaming. So our attempt at streaming on Monday will possibly include the first leg of this journey and the adventure, which I'm a DM that's DM for a while, but it'll be interesting to see, because we're going to use some things that are suggested in the book, but they're not things that I've necessarily used with my game. So who knows? Maybe this is going to make me a better dungeon master, or maybe it'll just be a little bit of a stumbling block. We'll see. So you guys excited to talk about your two characters?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kind of a recap on what we did last week, since we couldn't fight off the gremlins.
Yeah, the gremlins won. Actually, I mean, I don't know how many hit points they have, but they hit hard, man. They hit hard. So step one, creating an identity for your characters. We had a lot of fun talking about this. And if you've been paying attention to the previous episodes, we actually created the world in which we're playing in. So this is a kind of a group and collaborative effort, which is a little bit different than I'm used to when we play in things like Forgotten Realms. But Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your core dweller? What is his identity? Who is he?
Yeah, I didn't have a set, role character in mind. Brent kind of had a solid idea, and I really didn't. So I decided to use the charts in the book. And so my identity of my character is a free-spirited alien alchemist with a heart of gold.
And that is quite the mouthful to have there, really. And it's interesting because, if you don't have a character, you can use their core concept identity creation tables. And Jeff actually rolled a couple times just to see what kind of mixing and maxing kind of a sentence that describes him comes out to me, because that's all it really is the sentence that describes your character, tells you like how you see yourself. And so you're an alien. And in this case, what does alien mean to you?
Sorry.
Bless you.
Bless you.
I decided that since most of the people on the planet live in the oases that are floating up in the sky, alien in this case would mean that I am a core dweller, or somebody that lives on the shattered surface of the planet. It's kind of like living in the in my head, the wild, wild west, or the Australian outback, kind of, the frontier, where the people above you need to exploit your labor, to grow food or raise animals or to do stuff like that, or mine. And so that's how I decided to approach Alien. I decided to not actually be from another planet, although I did think about that for a second.
Sure. And in this world, we hadn't really talked about the demographics of the world, but it seems as though this is human-centric in terms of races that populated this. And that's, of course, a good question for people to really consider. Like, do you want to include fantasy races in your world? Because there's nothing that says you can't or can. We have
Sure.
just kind of chosen a human-centric world. Now, that doesn't mean that there
Or
can't
even-
be fantasy races. It just
or even
means
like
that
or even like weirder races, because in some of the JRPGs, aren't there like frog people and stuff like that?
if you look hard enough, you can find some very weird characters that have come up over time. And
Well, there you go.
yeah, I think the frog.
Yeah, so I
approach
mean, I
or-
think if one of us would have had a strong feeling that we wanted to play a character like that, I mean, I think you would have let us.
Mhm.
I think we were okay for this first foray into Fabula Ultima.
Yeah, no, I
Keep
think
it
it's
human centric.
it's interesting because it is, I mean, there's the weird part because it's not really an established world. I mean, there's nothing really going, well, I have to really change the lore to accommodate this weird character to create. There's no lore. It's now new lore. Have fun. So, all right. And Brett, what about you? What is your character and how do they currently see themselves in a sentence?
As Jeff said, I kind of was inspired by our beginnings of the world building that we started to do, and I had helped create the planetoid or Oases Acheron, which was the city state that where everybody's infected by this fungus that raises the dead after they die, and they're used as a like a labor force, and then the fungus is kind of uh, uh, contagious. So I decided that they have a kind of a classes system, and there's a group called the Heralds, Acronian Heralds, who are the people that are allowed to have contact with those outside of their oasis. And so my character, I described it as Acheronian Herald Knight. Meaning he is allowed to contact the others. He's not contagious, but he's also kind of done. He's trained to be contact with people outside of the Oasis, and also to be effective if he's by himself. So
Mhm.
that was kind of my concept.
And just to kind of remind people a little bit about Acheronians, if they hadn't, so the city state itself, the Oases, you mentioned that it's kind of a Romanesque landscape, and so I feel like the robes and everything like that. But if there is a purpose that they can create, these bodies that are after death, you had mentioned it wasn't like they wanted to just infect everyone, right? You kind of
Right.
mentioned that it was the opposite.
Right. They consider
Selective.
they consider it a gift. So the fact that there's these heralds that are born, and the fungus that infests their skin is a different color. So you can tell who the heralds are. So that's why they're used specifically, is because they don't want to have everybody have this fungus that they have, because they consider it a gift. So they kind of want to keep it close to their own people.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. And so when you think about like the ramifications, caste systems, different colors of fungus, all kinds of fun things that
Mhm.
happen here. So cool. And so the next part is you're thinking about your character's theme, a strong ideal or emotion, something that basically um, dominates your character's actions. And I guess I should mention, before we move away from identity, is that it's really important to understand like what your identity is because your identity is something you use to invoke throughout the game to give yourself an edge when making checks. So if there is and so there is a benefit to choosing an identity that is mechanically beneficial, not something that is like really esoteric or weird. Like my identity is I'm a purveyor of toast would be very hard to use in a JRPG unless that JRPG is about buttering bread, something like that.
I think you're underestimating toast, but we can move on.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying is that there's very like, I'm a purveyor of vanilla beans, something that it'd be harder to work in. Whereas you guys seem like you have stuff that would help you get an edge should you need it during the course of the game. And so the next one, themes. So your theme is your strong ideal or emotion that drives your actions and choices. Um, Jeff, do you want to tell us a little bit about the theme? And did you use one of the suggested themes?
I used one of the suggested themes, I think, because mine was mercy. I am trying to help the downtrodden in society. Um, I'm kind of a do-gooder. Want to help raise everybody up. Uh, get everybody jobs. Make sure people have food. That kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know if I'm fully like what was that movie? Was it Dave with Kevin Kline?
Oh, geez.
Where he became he was a doppelganger for the president, but he worked at a like job placement agency. It's Friday and everybody works on Friday. Maybe not quite that, but that's what I do. If I can help out, if it's within my power to help out, I help out. And so I provide mercy and aid and whatever I can.
Okay. Yeah. And so so in the game, of course, as you try to develop your character and anything like that, is there a specific group of people that you wish to help above all others? Or is it just kind of like that, hey, the people at the bottom really need to be brought from the bottom to somewhere else kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's the general raising the bottom, right? If wherever the bottom of the pyramid is, just trying to shorten the pyramid.
Acronian undead liberator.
Well, I don't know that they need to be liberated. They seem happy. It's an honor for them to sweep the streets after their death. I don't know. We got to discuss that. There may be opportunities.
Yeah. So, all right. And Brent, what was the theme that you went with?
I also went one from the book. My understanding was that they kind of suggested that you do that at least for your first character, because there's some baked in kind of things. And so I picked ambition. I think my character as a herald is really ambitious to move up in the kind of the Senate or caste system of Acheronia, and so he's willing to do jobs and necessary things to get things done. He's very ambitious sort.
Necessary things? Is that like Space Marine necessary things?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. We do what is necessary.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm just
for the Emperor.
I'm just trying to understand who I'm working with. That's all.
He is very different than your character.
Yeah, no. I know. I almost played the other one, but I'm like, I never play a character like this, so I'm going to give it a shot.
I think it'll be a good contrast. I usually don't play characters that are overly ambitious or almost selfish to a way either. So
we're going against type here, so I think it'll be fun.
But the idea is that hopefully it gets you into that, out of your shell, and just kind of embrace the character. And since it's such a small group, you have more time for spotlight and shine. And I have to say that this, coming back to particular group size, since we are only playing with 2 people right now in this particular experiment, it'll be a little bit different. It'll be a little bit differently balanced than you might expect, but also I think it makes it hard for one person to just like not play. So okay, so origin, now the origin is is this place where you guys come from, and as we've already discussed, Brent is from Acheronia, and then of course Jeff is from he's a core dweller. And again, with identity and theme, your origin may be invoked to reroll 1 or both dice during a check. So it's just something to say like, hey, how can your origin be used mechanically within the gameplay to say that this is a way that you derive some benefit from it. And that could be, and there can be a lot of ways in which you do that. Now, in terms of like, is there a way to metagame this? The funny thing is, I don't think there's a way to metagame this type of situation as much as you could in maybe a more established world, just because it's like, well, you guys are choosing kind of fledgling places, so it either applies or it doesn't. Right.
Well, I mean, of course there's ways to metagame it. Like most narrative games, though, the feeling in this one is like, sure, you broke it. Is that going to make the narrative any more fun? No. Potentially.
Not really. And when you're and after we described, like I really have a hard time imagining how these three things could be used to really be invoked, because you have to, I mean, you are limited by your meta points, your fabula points, right? So you can't, like,
Mhm.
it's not like you can go, I'm invoking my origin to reroll dice and just get to reroll like 30 times in a session. You have to have, their fabula points to allow
I
you to
need those though. I need rerolls like that.
well, I know you do, but not for the reason everyone is expecting at this point. It's just because you've really grown tired of making the games interesting through failure, is what you're saying.
It's true. It's true. I love making hyper competent characters that the
Can't
dice
do
prove
anything.
the dice choose to prove me wrong on every single roll.
Yeah.
Oh, this is in my wheelhouse. Apparently, it isn't.
Apparently, the
Ah,
wheels fell off my house.
who put this banana in front of my house? Who?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then moving on to the character classes. The character classes is really interesting in Fabula Ultima because, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, where you basically say, I'm starting a character, I'm going to be a fighter level 1. Fabula Ultima changes it up a little bit, and you basically have a level 5 character, and you have 5 levels to distribute, but you're forced to choose at least 2 classes, but no more than 3. So either choose 2 or 3 classes, your choice. Um, but you then distribute those 5 levels amongst those classes to create, the image of your character as best as you can, using their rules. Now, the different classes, I'm not going to list them all, but the classes can, vary quite a little bit from what you might truly expect. There's not like when I think if you play D&D, you might be really tempted to say, okay, where is my sorcerer? Where is my wizard? Those kind of D&D-esque archetypes. And that's a little bit tricky because they didn't necessarily go 100% that way. Because you can have an elementalist, which is kind of a destructive magic user, and you'd probably label them close to an evoker. But when you think about like a cleric, you probably lean towards spiritualist, because they're the magic and life spells, but there's also an arcanist who summons magical avatars of ancient godlike creatures, you know, different things like that. So you can kind of create your character with a little bit of a flourish. And Jeff, what did you end up choosing for your characters, and what kind
Uh,
of drew you to them?
I'm a tinkerer and a rogue. 3 levels of tinkerer, 2 levels of rogue. What kind of drew me to it was when I rolled the identity. Alchemist was specifically mentioned, and tinkerer is probably the class that's most closely associated with that. I also went with rogue, which isn't necessarily the traditional rogue that some people might think of when they think of fantasy role playing. Um, it's more the type of character that gets abilities to, like, in combat, steal from your opponents.
Mhm.
And then then I take all of that stuff that I get from there and use it to help the party or use it to help the people that I'm helping outside. So that's what I thought, that those two kind of fit my character.
Okay. Yeah, no, and they're good. And I think that, when you combine it, it definitely felt like the tinkerer with their ability to craft inventions and kind of use inventory points in unique ways was a good fit for your alchemist. And then really the other one is just kind of the flavor you went with. You kind
Yeah.
of went with a more, not maybe on the above board type. You've got quick
Yeah,
fingers, let's
they're
say.
trying to kill me, so
Yeah.
or knock me unconscious, or however that works.
Robin Hood was a hero too, and
Yeah, Robin Hood was a hero. Dang it.
definitely had some thiefy aspects. So
That's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
and there is. I did think of that. I did not mention it, but thank you, Brett.
yeah, I mean, no, it's a
It
thing.
is. It's a trope, right? A lot of
Mhm.
times when we build characters, we follow certain tropes from books and movies and TV. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Brent, what did you choose?
I since he's a herald, and speaking to people is kind of one of the things that he's trained for. I put 2 levels in orator, and because the idea is they may be going to these other oases alone and get in trouble or whatnot, or do spy shit. I gave him 3 levels in weapon master. because I also thought the class was interesting. So
Nice.
Yeah. So definitely somebody that would be handy in a fight.
yeah, he makes a good. I kind of looked at the heralds as lone operatives. I guess is kind of what I looked at them as. So
Yeah. And so between them, of course, you only get 5 levels. And when you're choosing your levels, the thing I thought was interesting is that you get basically skills. And so the skills and how they're spent, because you get free skills. So basically, a weapon master, for example, gets 5 extra hit points, and then they get the ability to equip martial melee weapons and martial shields. But then you can choose one of their 5 different skills, and you can choose them up to a certain number that's denoted by the skill. But like, for example, Blade Storm sounds pretty badass if you ask me. When you perform attacks, you basically add a tag to it that says this is now a multi. And if it has a multi already to it, you can bump that up by 1. So you could potentially hit up to three things in a single swing. So and that's not, obviously that's not a character that is starting at level 1 as a fighter. And that's something we discussed when we talked about Pathfinder versus Dungeons and Dragons. It was nice to kind of have more flexibility, even though in Pathfinder, if you did swing 3 times at something, you generally were going to miss at level 1 because that -10 is brutal.
yeah, well, and it's
So-
it's always kind of brutal. Like the third attack is of dubious value.
Yeah,
But I will point out that we've managed to run, and this is just an aside, I wanted to point out to everybody, we have managed to run at least 2 Pathfinder games where we haven't attacked anything yet. The last few sessions, there's been no combat whatsoever, which...
Well, there was almost combat. I tried to get there to be combat, but you guys ran away really fast.
Well, there's reasons for that.
Yeah, there are reasons.
Just because I stacked the deck against you doesn't mean anything.
That's a good reason to run away.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
For the record, kids, if you're outnumbered, run away.
And I also have to say, I was impressed at how I got everybody to scatter into the wind, though. That was fast. So,
yeah, like I said, it reminded me so much of that scene in Big Trouble in Little China, where they're all hunkered down in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, "Fast!" and they all run away. Yeah.
That was it. That's how it happened. So perfect. So you guys have some interesting characters. I think that kind of tells you the flavor of the adventure that we try to do in terms of, because it also is based on the group type, because the group type we chose was seekers. And so you guys are seeking something as part of this entire thing.
Yeah. We've been given a mission or something to prevent, I think we decided it was to prevent a unbalance amongst the
superpowers.
Yeah, the oases. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I also found of interest is when you're generating stats, they're dice types. The dice types, and the fact that there's 3 presets that you get to choose from. There's like the Jack of all trades, which is the one that I selected, which is a D8 in each, and then there was the specialist, which is the D6s and D10s, and then I don't remember the last one.
So there are 3 different dice types. You're absolutely correct that there's the Jack of all trades, the specialist, the D10s for 2 and D6 for 2. So then there's just the average, which is D10, D8, D8, D6.
Yeah, that's what I picked.
And so
the average.
And so the nice thing about this is it doesn't really take a lot of like high-powered math to basically do skill checks. Because what in this game, what they've done, is just so everyone's aware, is that they've taken their stats, which you're applying these dice to. You have dexterity, insight, might, and willpower, and you're combining those typically in a way that creates a check. And so when you have dexterity, that's pretty much as you imagine, measures precision, coordination, finesse, and reflex. Insight represents observation, understanding, and reasoning. Might is strength, resilience, and fortitude. And willpower is determination, charisma, and the ability to influence others. Now, when you think about those 4, I mean, as a longtime D&D player, I immediately was like, aren't we missing some in order to kind of like talk about this? And really what they've done is, I think there are other games that do this too, but they say, hey, grab 2 of these that make the most sense, that to what you're trying to attempt. And they talk about like, what was it? There's actually a check. So like, if you want to move silently, well, you're going to use dex plus dex because you're just trying to be very very quiet, move with finesse, and slink about and all those kind of things. But if you want to avoid a trap or flee a collapsing building, it's Dex plus Insight. And so there is, there is some kind of negotiation that can happen here. And I can imagine that, as a new game master, this especially, if I haven't really come across a situation and I can't really wrap my head around like what two stats would be the most appropriate for a situational check, it might be a good time to ask the players to be like, okay, well, what do you think would allow you to deflect the boulder that's about to crash on your friend? Like how would you get it out of the way? Might plus might. I'm just going to try to push it out of the way, or I see that there's this thing, you know what I'm saying, and kind of twist it around.
It's more of a narrative use of your abilities than
Mm-hmm.
necessarily just a I roll my strength check, d20 plus whatever my strength modifier is.
Yeah.
It's kind of more narrative, and then in it, how you decide to roll the dice narratively decides how your character responds. Like if you're rolling Dex plus Dex, like you said, you're basically saying I dodge whip quick out of the way of the boulder that's trying to crush us.
Yeah. And there is an optional rule that they suggest, is that if you really feel comfortable with it, the GM can decide one of the stats, and then the player can decide one of the stats. And there's nothing wrong with you both picking the same stat in that scenario, but it just gives you the flexibility for you both to kind of decide. That, of course, doesn't apply to situations in which the attributes or checks are already established by the rules, and that really comes into play with like accuracy. So, for example, you couldn't choose something to roll to hit. Choose your better stats because you just want to roll better with your sword. Oh, I roll insight twice to roll with my sword. That's not how that works.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So those do exist. And just so people are aware, the D6s, D8s, D10s, D12s. I believe that's the range of dice that you have to work with. And when they talk about like the different checks and everything like that, is that what they consider an easy check for anybody to make would be 7. And a competent person would be a typical result of a 10 or more. An expert would be 13 or something around that range. And then an amazing check, like like a really awesome check, is really around 16. Now, in this case, I mean, I think that gives you kind of a range that if your dice have to be above whatever the target number is, or if you're kind of wondering how you fare with your dice rolls, that gives you kind of a range as to where they fit in. Now,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so criticals, with dice are, they're doubles of those dice, and they do allow you to succeed even if the check is higher than your total result. So if you roll 2d6, roll 6 on both, and then the difficulty was 13, you'd still succeed in that scenario. Yep. So that's dice attributes and all those kind of things. I think what we're on to next is we're on to hit points, mind points, inventory points, defense, magic, and initiative. So step 6 here has got quite a few in there for it. Now, I didn't feel like these were that hard to derive. Your hit points are your character level character level plus 5 times your character's base might die. And then, of course, your crisis is half of your hit points rounded down. And then your mind points are the same, but your character level plus 5 times your base willpower dice size. Now, I don't think that that's too tricky in terms of math or anything like that. But just so you guys know, like, things can hurt pretty bad in the game depending on the type of stuff that you use. And so just to kind of give anybody an idea as to how equipment works, is that when you hit somebody with something, let's say you guys got into a brawl or something like that, is that what you would do is you would basically roll your accuracy. If you hit, then a lot of weapons actually use what is known as the highest roll, and then they add another little bit to that. So like where is that here? There's an equipment list here. I should remember where this was before I thought about this. Dungeons, equipment. So like a weapon, for example, a rapier, is that your rapier has its accuracy is dexterity plus insight plus 1, and so your damage is your highest roll plus 6 in physical damage. And so if you rolled a 6, you'd get plus 6 on top of that, doing 12. And so at first level, with you guys having at least 5 plus or 25 plus 5 plus, I don't know, what do you guys have for hit points?
I have 60 hit points.
60 hit points. So if you imagine somebody's rolling, anywhere between 12 and 18 points of damage if they slashed you with a rapier. I mean, it hurts.
I have 35. 18 would hurt.
Mhm.
But it doesn't kill you in one hit like a mage could die in D&D.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So there is that. It's not as easy to die the first turn.
I'm sure you'll figure it out.
I've been reading. There are some ways. But that's not my goal here. That's not my goal. The goal is to tell a story, not to murder you.
Do we believe that, Jeff?
No, Mike's usually he's got a closet with all the characters that have not made it out of a game.
You have your binder that says graveyard on it.
It's not my fault. Now I have to say that some of those are my fault and some of those aren't my fault.
Filled with my characters mostly, excuse me.
Well, we discovered a few of them died for reasons unknown.
Just to let everybody know, famous last words, Brent last words in a Mike game is, I'm a barbarian, I berserk. Oh, you're dead. Yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that.
Was there?
It's still a jest.
We'll discuss that sometime for everybody.
All right. So
we'll
then,
set up an argument, counter argument.
It was your own fault. I had nothing to do with it. So inventory points were equal to 6. Now inventory points is basically, it allows you to choose things to do right at the moment. And so your ability to use like a potion or something like that is basically saying, okay, this is an inventory point that you spend to pull a potion out of your pack. Now you do replenish inventory points when you rest and you spend a little bit of Zenith, the currency in the game. But I really like the ability for you to say like, okay, I really need this right now. I have the inventory to cover it. Boom. And now you have that thing that helps move the narrative along in your direction.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's really a cool feature.
It is.
I have it when I need it sort of role. I think that's good on a couple different levels.
And I don't think it's unique to this particular game. I think other games have used similar like currency for inventory as opposed to just having like, because I think that was like my least favorite time in a D&D adventure is like when we had an entire session dedicated to shopping.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible actually.
Yeah, it's just like I mean, like I understand like, you need to keep track of your arrows and all that stuff, but at a certain point my brain just goes.
At a certain point everybody's does, except for the few people that's really their jam.
Yeah, they're really excited about the shopping sessions and games, and they do exist. There are players that are like,
no, they are,
but
they exist in the rules, so the players that exist that follow them, and don't get me wrong, like some people have described like how they've micromanaged resources in a way that sounds actually kind of like they've had fun adventures, but I believe it's like if anybody reads any Knights of the Dinner Table or anything like that, it's like always having that Teflon Billy guy at your table, and you're like, it is both a benefit and a detriment.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, like I said, it's depends on the type of person. Yeah. It's a narrative game, and so it does narrative things, I think is the best way to put it.
It's true.
Whereas like shopping in a game is much more I feel simulationist, let's say.
Yeah.
And not my cup of tea. Okay, so last, your defense, magic, defensive, and initiative. Your magic defense is equal to your dexterity die size. Your defense is equal to your dex die size. Your magic defense is equal to your insight die size, and your initiative modifier is set to 0 out of the gate. And so I think that with you guys setting up and all that kind of stuff, do you guys want to read off your derived stats here, just so that people get an idea as to where you sit in terms of your hit points, mind points, etc.?
Sure. My hit points are 35. My mind points are 45, and my inventory points are 10.
Ooh. Be good.
And my hit points were 60. My what are they called? Mind points? Mana
Yes.
points? Mind points are 55, and my IP is 6.
Okay. And Jeff's, the reason his inventory points are higher is because I believe the Tinkerer class gave you some extra.
Actually, both the Tinker and the Rogue both gave me
Oh,
2
that's why.
additional inventory points. So
Ooh.
I have a lot of items secreted in, pockets. And
Yeah, and they expect you to get your ass kicked as the weapon master, obviously.
they must. You got more hit points and mind points than me. So
Well, the Orator gives mind, like their abilities seem to function off mind points, so that's where I got the mind points.
Oh no! It makes sense based on the classes you picked and the fact that you did the the
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Okay, and so really that's character creation. Now, for us not having done character creation like in the system at all, contextually it didn't. I don't think there was anything that really made us scratch our heads and go, I don't really understand how this works or anything like that. I thought it was fairly easy myself. What about you guys as new first-time players in Fabula Ultima? Did you feel like it was a good character creation, bad character creation, wait and see character creation? What do you guys say?
I think it's good character creation mechanically. It's pretty quick. I think this is one of those games that I would say is for more experienced players and GMs, because I think if you have somebody who's new to role playing and you're kind of like, hey, come up with a sentence that describes your character, that might be a little bit more difficult because there's a lot more, like, the pile's so big. Which with world creation, I think world creation would be daunting for a first time player too. Just like, getting that going is something that we're all kind of used to as storytellers. I think it's fantastic. I think the character creation, the world creation, I enjoyed. I just think it could be daunting for first time players. That would be my thing.
Sure, but with a guiding hand, it wasn't so bad. Especially tables. Tables help.
It did have tables. So if you did want to give yourself over to some randomness, and if you decided you didn't like something, you can always change it.
The part that
I want to adapt that a little bit.
Yeah, the part that I would say is hard for first time players or people new to role playing is the be creative on the spot sort of pressure that has a tendency to come up. And so I always say that I always wonder if games that do that, like this, where it's like make a world go, those are kind of moments that for new players you would definitely need an experienced GM. I guess I would say this is one of those games where you need an experienced GM. Maybe they could guide new players fairly well, but I think you would have a lot of conversation when the world building part, and then potentially the freeform character generation too.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
That's good. Yep. And Jeff, any extra stuff you wanted to add from your perspective?
I like the fact that they included some of the random tables in case you got stuck, in case you weren't sure what you wanted to do. I like that. I thought it went relatively smooth. There isn't too many nitpicky things, where we were spending hours going down a rabbit hole. So that was good. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a fit for the way the game's going to feel and play out, but it's going to be neat finding out.
I think one of the other things that was good that I really liked is when they say, make your class out of 5 of these classes, or make your character out of these 5 classes. I really like the fact that they have archetype suggestions. Like they had the alchemist and they had those other ones, because that does avoid that moment where they're like, well, I want to play this, and then like, what do I do? Like what do I do to combine these?
That's a great point.
because that could be really daunting at first for someone. It just because there's a lot of class. There's 15 classes.
Mhm.
There's 15 classes, and it's like, pick up to 3, but it doesn't have to be 3. It can only be 2, or it can be 2, and it has to be 3 levels and 2, and then like that could be daunting. But they did a good job. If you can look at those and kind of look at them, and that's what I did when I was talking about the Herald. I was like, well, what kind of fits? And I looked at the generated class list, and I was like, oh, okay, well that kind of makes sense. And then you can tweak it, like
Yeah.
Jeff did for his character.
Yeah, I just went a little different way for flavor, but I definitely took the Tinkerer for the Alchemist part. So yeah, I did. I used part of their suggestion and part of my own thought process.
I think that was really smart of them to do. Really smart.
Yeah, no, I think it really helps out. And I do have a dirty secret. I'm really happy that, with the pause and Pathfinder, I'm going to get the other group to play this as well, so I'll get to double up. Yeah, did you like how I snuck that in
double
there?
Up. I think it'll be good.
It'll be good.
It'll be good. It'll be different. It'll be a lot different than Pathfinder because it is, again, a narrative game. So it'll be interesting to see how people take that.
And you never know. We could, and if people like the Fabula Ultima rules enough, we could continue the other adventure of Fabula Ultima style characters.
We could
possibly.
Hey,
Brent. No, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say I have deviated enough from the Pathfinder world of Galarian that it's not unrecognizable, but I'm just having fun. Fuck the deep lore.
No, I agree. I do that with every setting. What were you going to say, Jeff?
I was just going to ask, what's your character's name? Have you named your character yet?
I did. His name is Ozias. Ozias.
Okay. Nice. My character's name is Drum Lone Ash.
Drum Lone Ash. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, we dig it. So there's some Pathfinder characters. Good job, Mike. There's some Fabula Ultima characters.
Fabula Ultima Finder Path characters.
So there's some finding Fabula Ultima characters on the pathway to success and stuff. So no, I think honestly I'm really excited. The next steps that we have, or the next steps you take in this, is that we get to create a prologue type session where I have never really done a prologue session. I don't know if you guys have for that, but the two types of things that I don't really have a lot of experience with is doing the GM scenes and doing prologue sessions. But I do like the idea of a prologue session where you get to take your character and have your basically the session that is most like it's most about you, because a prologue session is typically about just the one character in the spotlight. So if we have a 2-hour session, hopefully it'd be about an hour for each of you, depending on how you play. You might be able to just cut through the stuff pretty quick, but the idea being is that this is how you introduce your character, is a little bit more flavorful than just your standard meet in a tavern and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's nice because you're not just describing your characters to your peers and then kind of beginning from there. You're actually kind of slipping into the skin right away, kind of thing. And so we'll see how that all plays out. Hopefully it'll be fun. This is my first time kind of segregating the characters out and basically playing with just one person and trying to get them together. It'll be a little bit different, but I think I got some.
I think it'll be fun.
But if you are curious and you haven't done those things, there is kind of like a D6 option that you can use for each of the different types that allow you to kind of like say, okay, well, what happens after your prologue? Oh, here we go. Blink. And then
there are a lot of random life path stuff you can find out there, and that kind of help you if you need a story starter for that type of stuff. There's a lot of 20 questions. There's RPG 20 questions. If you look that up, you can find a lot of lists of ways to flesh out your character. So those are always interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's enough stuff to get started here, and I think you have to be careful because there is you don't want to have everything explored. You want to have enough to get started, and then kind of as you decide stuff is cool, unless you want something core to your character, right? Like, oh, I am in, this is a core thing to my character, is I don't know who my parents are, but I had a loving family. I just don't know who my real parents are.
Yeah. Not the normal D&D trope where your parents are dead and your extended family's dead and your father's the or not father because he's dead. We already established that. Whatever. They're all dead. Doomed, dead, gone.
You were raised by the streets of Alkenstar.
Exactly.
Smelling smog and fighting off crystal shiver fever and
Your
shit
goblin
like
is
that.
incepted out of the dirt to mug the homeless. Yeah, that sort of thing.
pretty much. So I think that's pretty much it for right now. I think if we can suggest that people watch us on Monday, they can tell us how we do, what they would like to see more of, if we're just, because we're not going to be highfalutin
It's going to be this level. It's going to be this level of streaming. So
yeah, we're just gonna fuck around with the idea and see what happens, and go from there. There
people
won't
like
be
it and
battle
treat it.
maps, just
Yeah.
so you know. I mean, that's a lot of effort. Battle maps. I don't mind battle maps, but
We prefer theater of the mind here at Rollwise.
it's true.
I'll try and come up with a more theater of the mind way to say that in the future, but
Yeah,
It sounds like you just did.
okay, well, that works for everybody. We'll go with that. I'll try and figure out more. I'll try to add more drama. Maybe I'll have like a sparkler or something next time.
just a visual effect, like I remember when Zoom backgrounds became really popular and like the meetings, they're like theater of the mind, whoop, new background.
Yeah.
As you can tell, we don't have green screens either. That's how
Throw
low
glitter.
budget this is.
No, we don't.
So
No.
all righty, guys. Well, then I think we can go ahead and wrap this up, and then we'll look forward to Monday. So, Jeff, do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of us if they want to?
Yeah, if you want to reach out on Twitter or X, YouTube, Facebook, and Threads, it's at Rollwise. If you'd like to email us, it's rollwiseguys@gmail.com, or you can just leave a comment down at the bottom of the video.
Mm-hmm. And we appreciate and read every comment that comes through YouTube. And we even try to respond if we know how to respond. May not be the day of, but we try to get you as soon as we can.
Yeah, we do try to get to the comments as much as we can. And thank you everyone for everyone who's commented so far. And thank you everyone for joining us on this journey. And as always, roll well and roll wise. Be safe out there. Bye.
Bye.